This is Chris McKaylee, and I provide the Regulatory Agency Advocacy Seminar as part of Capital Seminars brought to you by Ray LeBeau. It's a 2-hour program, and regulatory advocacy is an important part of any government affairs strategy. The regulatory process here in California is really a world of its own. It's got its own special rules and procedures, its own process, its own players. And regulatory advocates, even legislative advocates, have to be aware of those rules and to understand the regulatory process in order to be an effective advocate. You may not know this, but many statutes are actually not self-executing. Instead, they need regulatory agencies to implement and interpret those statutes by creating regulations. This also means that each side in a regulatory battle, or even coming from a legislative battle, may actually have the proverbial extra bite at the apple. In other words, you may have been successful in getting an underlying statute enacted, but you should still be concerned that your opponent may attempt to limit the benefits of your statute through the regulatory process. And you may have been on the losing end of the legislative battle, but the regulatory process may provide you another opportunity to perhaps soften the blow of the statute's negative effect on your client's interests. I think after this 2-hour program, you'll gain a fair amount of knowledge about the California rulemaking process and also how to be an effective advocate. In many ways, regulatory agency advocacy is similar to legislative advocacy, but in other ways, it's different. Just because a statute's been enacted, again, doesn't mean that there isn't more of an opportunity to deal with the issue. Now, most of you are familiar with legislative advocacy, where you lobby for or against legislation in the legislative branch of government. Regulatory advocacy requires lobbying for or against regulations. And of course, you're dealing with the executive branch of state government. You may not be aware, but California has over 200 different agencies, departments, boards, and commissions and bureaus that make public policy through their authority to adopt regulations. And each and every year, according to our Office of Administrative Law, there are between 700 and 800 new regulations adopted by those 200 plus agencies and departments. And so we go through this seminar during the 2-hour period where we talk about this quasi-legislative activity, that is, the rulemaking activities of California's executive branch of government. Just like the legislative process, an effective advocate needs to know the rules and the players in the regulatory process. And so this is where you'll learn about them, not just the process, but how to be an effective advocate and hopefully influence positively or negatively rulemaking projects throughout California's executive branch of state government. So I hope you'll join us at our next regulatory advocacy seminar.